State Representative Jim Struzzi joins us on the line. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Moments ago, within this past hour, State Representative Aaron Bernstein has tweeted that he's heard that the PIAA is expected to announce they'll follow the governor and his recommendation to suspend all sports in the state till January 1st. Of course, the PIAA hasn't said that officially. They're holding an emergency meeting later this morning. Representative Struzzi, you were with us early yesterday morning on a number of topics. We touched upon this, but we didn't really get into it. When you heard the news yesterday about the governor's strong recommendation, which he made at the end of his news conference and then turned around and walked out, what was your reaction?
Extremely disappointed, Todd. I think that was really unfortunate that he did that in such a haphazard way. I don't think when you make an announcement like that, then you follow it up with a press release, much like the governor has done throughout this pandemic response. You really, really aren't thinking through the consequences of those decisions. These young people who have been training all summer, some of them training for their entire high school careers, for this final season, for their senior season, to have that ripped from them without even seemingly giving any forethought. When you come out and you say people can social distance, people can wear masks, and do about the things that are normal in life, like high school sports, we have to let them do that. I think that the long-term impacts of this decision are going to affect these young people for the rest of their lives, and to me, that is unacceptable.
We talk about the science, and the governor has made a habit of citing science that supports his position. There's plenty of science in the other direction as well, and so it becomes a pretty slippery slope. In this case, the science seems to indicate that kids are going to be much better off by actually being in school and actually doing sports, which is such a key component of a school life.
Well, it absolutely is. We're talking about mental and physical health here. These young people need sports, they need activity, they need social interaction. And I thought at the beginning of the week it was preposterous to not allow parents to go to the games. If you're going to talk about CDC guidelines and you're going to talk about wearing masks, and people are willing to do that, then let us get about normal activities following those guidelines. It makes no sense to me to take this away from these young people because, they need this. We need this. We need some sense of normal life here. I understand people are still concerned with the virus, and I get that. And I'm telling people, when you're out in public, you're out of a public place or a business, wear a mask, social distance, do what you're supposed to do. But let's get back to normal life. And taking this away from these young people, it just breaks my heart because I know a lot of parents who've reached out to me this week, upset that they couldn't go to their kids' games. And now to cancel the games, Todd, it's just going to be devastating. And I don't think that the governor and his administration thought this through fully.
Not surprisingly, along party lines, it seems, there is some condemnation and some praise for the governor for his actions yesterday. And one of the interesting things to me was the flip-flop nature of it. Earlier this week, he said he would be offering on Thursday guidance on playing fall sports. Nobody thought that meant let's just cancel it altogether. Jake Corman, very strong comments, others in Harrisburg. What are you hearing from both Republicans and Democrats about this?
Well, I really don't think this is a political issue. I think this is about our youth, and this is about our families. And I hope that the PIAA, despite what you may have heard or in that tweet, I hope they take a stand here, and I hope they stand up for these young people. People have been out there practicing. Coaches have been teaching these kids. I just saw the Indiana students practicing football yesterday when I took my daughter over to the school for a meeting. They were wearing masks. They're practicing with masks on. Let them play their sports. This is just, it's too much. And people, I think, are going to start to revolt regardless of your political affiliation. It's just, we can't keep everything boxed down forever. And if people are willing to practice social distancing, if they're willing to wear masks, if they're willing to do everything they're told, then I see no reason why these young people can't do what makes them happy.
The amount of work that has gone into this summer has just been, it's really thousands of man hours being put in by the men and women with the PIAA, with each of these schools designing plans, getting prepared. The summer workouts have gone well. Of course, there are going to be times when you're going to have to shut down a program here or there. But then we're treating the entire state as if it's Philadelphia in this case, as if the outbreak there is an influence here in Indiana County and some of our more rural counties where there is no coronavirus right now.
And Todd, that's been our frustration from the beginning, is this statewide approach when it should have been a graded approach. I understand the red, yellow, green, and not everybody should have been red because you have a spike in cases, and then I'll submit that I think that's due in part to increased testing. So many people are not sick, even though they're testing positive. And I understand, there's concerns with, students taking the virus home to their parents or someone with, a vulnerable condition. But again, our numbers are not through the roof here. Yes, we've had a recent spike in percentages, but they're still relatively low. Our hospitalizations are low. And I think, we have to start looking this through a more common sense approach. And I worry about the long-term implications on these young people taking their senior year of sports away from them. What's that going to do for their future? What does that do for their self-confidence? What does that do for their faith in leadership, in government? I mean, there's so many repercussions that come with decisions like this. And for the governor to basically haphazardly throw that out at the end of a press conference is really disappointing to me. We want to stand with the governor. We want to get everybody healthy. We want to get back to normal. But to take this away at the 11th hour, to me, is just not the right approach.
People this morning are basically sitting around with crossed fingers as they await the PIAA decision. It does not look good across the Commonwealth for sports before the start of next year, and what these kids are going to do in terms of the lost scholarship opportunities, the lost benefits that they would get from playing fall sports. Jamming everything into spring, whatever you can out of it, it's going to be just a devastating impact economically on Pennsylvania, but certainly the spirit of the students is what we're most concerned about.
Yeah, but the bottom line is the governor still left it open, Todd. The PIAA can make a decision on this. Now, I do think that he's boxed them in by, saying that the Department of Health made this recommendation, and I don't know what liability that opens them up to. But he has left it up to them. They can take a stand here and stand up for these young people and their families. But that's the decision that they have to make. And I don't envy that decision. But I do think it's unfortunate the way this has come about with I don't think any real thought put behind it. And I think that the bottom line here is we have to think about these young people, their families, and what this is going to do to them long term. I understand the health concerns with the COVID-19. But we have to start looking at the bigger picture here.
I noted that the statement from the governor's office yesterday afternoon specifically wanted to lay the decision at the hands of the school boards, each local school board to make its own decision. Didn't really mention the PIAA, but the PIAA is the governing body for school sports, and so that seems to sort of override the PIAA's authority in this case. But obviously they're the ones that are going to set the tone here, aren't they?
And again, Todd, as you and I discussed yesterday, we had those two hearings with the Education Committee. These school boards want more guidance. I mean, this approach, this if you want to call it leadership, and just allowing so much vagueness in how you're governing these school districts, it's leading to so many questions, so much confusion. You can't have one school board say we're going to play sports and another school board, in another area say we're not going to play sports. What teams play each other? How does that work? I mean, there's too much vagueness, and I think a lack of a clear vision on how we get through this.
We were mentioning a couple of moments ago your colleagues in Harrisburg and what seems to be a very, very well, as I wrote earlier in the story, the chaos that erupted after the governor's announcement yesterday. Has there been any official legislative response? Is the legislature working with the PIAA in any way that you know?
I'm not aware of that at this point, Todd, although I did, yesterday Mark Burdig from Renda sent me a very good letter detailing some of these concerns. And, Mark's very involved in athletics in Homer City. And so with Mark's permission, I forwarded his letter to our House leadership. Because I think it was very poignant, and it pointed out, some of the more personal things that are happening with these young people, as I said earlier, who have been training for years for their senior year, thinking that's going to set them up with a college scholarship, as you mentioned, to the rest of their lives. And I think that Mark's letter really spelled that out. So I'm confident that they will use that letter to perhaps craft a letter or some correspondence to the governor expressing our concerns. And as you know, I did sign on to the letter that we sent earlier this week, asking for some flexibility to allow parents to attend their children's sporting events. And we see where that led. So
yeah,
I just don't know.
My goodness, maybe you ought to advocate in the other direction to see if he turns around. It's just a sad situation all around. There are no happy people here this morning in Pennsylvania when it comes to school sports. Representative Jim Struzzi, I want to thank you for coming back on and spending some time with us today.
Absolutely, Todd. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160 and